Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk webinar series. Today, we'll be going through some of the steps for configuring Untangle, including installing and some of the configuration processes that you can choose for the NG Firewall solution to ensure that you have a successful deployment. My name is Shannon Bonfiglio. I'm part of the marketing team here, and I'll be your host today. I have John Coffin, our Director of QA, who is also here. He'll be taking us through the slides and the demonstration. And of course, we'll be answering questions along the way. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. If you do select to use a phone, you will need to use the access code that is provided. You can use your computer audio as well. Reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to rewatch or share the webinar with your colleagues at your convenience. And of course, as I mentioned, we'll be answering questions along the way. We have a couple team members on hand to help. So please just submit those questions in the Q&A box on the right-hand side. And if you have a specific question or we don't end up getting to your question, you can always email us at sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. Before I pass this over to John, I just want to iterate, this is a highly technical webinar, so if you're not familiar with Untangle, NG Firewall, or networking concepts, then this may not be the best webinar for you. John's going to go into some very technical specifics about the product. We do have another webinar series called the 101 webinars. Those cover more higher level topics, and you can find all those webinars on our website. Those might be better for you. And with that, I will pass it over to John.
Thanks, Shannon. And thanks, everyone, for joining us for this webinar. Probably most of you are looking to deploy an Untangle and want to get some steps or ahead of time know what they need to do to deploy it. So a lot of it is, the key is Untangle needs to be in line with your traffic. That means all your traffic needs to go through the Untangle so we can inspect it. With that, there's two different ways of deploying Untangle for different environments. We have what we call a bridge or transparent mode. And this is a case where a lot of times a lot of times businesses that don't have a static IP will use this because their ISP modem already does natting, which means it converts the internet traffic to an internal address. And to avoid double natting, you want to have in transparent mode or bridge mode. And this works just as fine also. And then there's another way, router mode. This is generally the case where you have a static IP or you have a dynamic internet address, which you can access it directly. This works great if you're looking to do VPN services for your clients or for your staff. With that, I'm going to take a look at some of the ways that you can get Untangle and get started. So first of all, probably the biggest thing is you want to go to the website and go to our download page. And here on the download page, you'll have several options. Again, part of Untangle is completely free that you can use and download. So in order to try it, you actually have to put, there's no cost and you never even have to enter a credit card number. So all I'll do is select what kind of machine I have. So if I have a box with less than 4 gigs of RAM, I'm going to use the 32-bit. Otherwise, I'll use the 64. I also have choices of if I have a Linksys router, I'll use the firmware, or I can have actually put this on, if I already have a VM server that's connected to my firewall, I can go ahead and download a direct appliance. And then we have a couple of choices on format. There's ISO, and then there's image. Image is if you just don't have a CD player and just want to write it directly to a USB memory stick. You can actually, and you can boot off of that and install it directly. Today, I'm going to demonstrate how to do the 32-bit with an ISO image. So I'll go ahead and download that. After I download that, I'll get an ISO and then I will burn that to a CD and then hook that CD up to the box that I'm going to use for my firewall. and I'm going to start that. Since I can't share my screen while I'm installing it, I'm going to show that in a virtual environment so you can see the steps that you go through. So once you boot up your new firewall that you're going to use with the Untangle CD, you're going to get this screen where it's going to ask you to install. Just choose graphical unless you're having problems with the video, and then you can choose a text install, which is where it says plain install. So I'll go ahead and start my process of installing it. And then I can choose my language and choose my location. This is more for like date and so forth. And what kind of keyboard I'm using. And right now it's going to look for a hard drive on my machine and figure out where to install it. So it's going to look to see what kind of network or wireless cards I may have on my machine. So we'll do a quick scan. Okay, it says that I have everything I need. And the basic requirements are that you have 2 kinds of network cards, and you have a reasonable processor. Almost any modern processor, like an Atom chip or Celeron, or even the i series, like i3, i5, will be great. Okay, it's going to ask you if you want to make sure you format. One of the problems people have, this is not an application that runs on your Windows or Linux machine. This is a full OS install, so it will erase everything on your machine, and you have to make sure you want to do that. So I'll go ahead and say, yes, I want to erase machine. At this point, it'll start installing. It'll say, do you want me to repartition the hard drive? And you're going to say yes. So Untangle will go ahead and repartition the hard drive in the correct format, and it should install the process in just a second. Okay, so now we're installing it. I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead. At this point, there's no more questions. It's just going to install all the parts of it, the OS, all the applications, all at once. So I'm going to go ahead and, like famous cooks do, I'm going to pull the one out of the oven that's already in the ready state. Let me open this up a little wider. So at this point, it's fully installed, the system. I'm going to go ahead and say continue. And now it's going to reboot onto the new installed system. So at this point, it's just booting into the full Untangle. It's taking a little time today, probably because I have 2 of them running at the same time. Let me just go ahead and shut down some of these other ones, just so we have a little more performance.
Hey, John, can you talk about which version you're downloading and installing?
So the current download, if you go to the download page, is 13.2. Those who are already on some 13.1.1 or 13.1, those upgrades will be available shortly. So you should be getting those soon. So this has a lot of our GUI improvements to the thing. Let me see here. See where we are. Okay. So at this point, my Untangle has booted up in the system. It should pop up with my setup directory in a second. Here we go. So now we have the system set up. So now we're going to configure our Untangle for our particular environment. So I realized we chose our language in the previous thing. That was for the actually base system. Now we want to select the language we want for our Untangle itself. And there's a whole set of languages that are available on this. And these are the ones that we've actually, there's quite a bit of progress done, and these are all community supported languages. So you can choose what you select the best for your particular arrangement. Need to change that. And you can actually go to our Poodle webpage. Let me just bring that up in case you're interested in contributing to our language packs. And you can pick a language that you like to work on and actually add extra translations to that and help improve our translations for that. So getting back to our So now we picked our language. We'll go ahead and continue. We'll go ahead and make a password. It's very crucial that you put a really good password on this. While by default, Untangle has no login exposure out to the internet, a lot of times you'll decide that you want to allow configuration from the internet. Because you want to do it remotely. And if you have a weak password, a lot of times your machine will become compromised. I mean, I know everyone's have heard the stories, but literally we've had machines compromised because their password was password. And you definitely want to have a good password in here that it will be very hard to guess. So we'll go ahead and get our time zone. There's quite a few of them. The reason they have so many different ones because a lot of times the daylight savings time is different for certain areas. So next, we're going to take a look at our network, what kind of network cards we have. In this case, we're using 2 network NICs, and they're identified as VMware NICs. So I'll go, that's great. Go ahead and go on to the next page. Automatically, we're going to choose DHCP, and to just most of the time, this is the one you're going to have. If you're given a static IP from your ISP provider, you'll go ahead and enter it at this point and select static, and then make any changes that you need for that. Okay, so this is our external or WAN or external interface. Now we need to configure our internal interface. And if you have more than 2 interfaces, you'll be able to configure this. This is just the basic in order to get your configuration, the basic configuration of your Untangle. If you're going to do more elaborate configuration, you're going to do that later on in the web interface. So in this case, I'm going to choose router, and then I'll go ahead and and use DHCP. So I'll go ahead and go to the next step. Upgrades. Generally, we recommend keeping automatic upgrades on. If you're in a particular, like a school environment or a business environment, where you have policies for when you do upgrades, you might want to uncheck this. Connecting to the cloud of Untangle allows you to use our cloud scanner, which is just another level of scanning for viruses and so forth. It also allows you to use your account if you want to use Command Center. Also, if you call support, enables them to work with you on your machine. So we'll go ahead next. All right, at this point, we're done. Oh, hitting the wrong button here. And we're done now. So now we're done configuring our box, and we'll go ahead and at this point, what we can do is start configuring our box as we need it. Sorry, one step. You do want to, let me just refresh the page so we get that back. For some reason, here we go. So let's go ahead and let's see here. So I'm just going to go ahead. A virtual interface is having problems with my mouse, so it's not registering my click. Here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and what I'm going to do now is register my account with my box. This will link my Untangle account with, if you don't have one, you can actually create one. Just click on create account, and there's no cost for this. It's just a way to manage your box, and if you want to buy apps or get help, it's an easy way to do this. So now my box is connected to my link. I'm sorry, my box is connected with my account. So now we're done with that. So now we can manage the box directly. And here's an example of a box once we log in. I'm just logging in directly now, so we don't have any problems. As you can see, we have all the basic, let's see if it got any further. All right, let's try this one more time. So as you can see, we have our account, and generally you want to, it will display a thing that says, do you want to install the recommended apps? And we suggest for at least the first time is you click yes. And that will allow you to have a good, what we recommend and the settings we recommend for that. So at that point, you'll have the configurations, and if you need to install more apps, you just click on the install apps, and then you can install them as you need them, depending on what you want to do. And again, you'll see you have a free trial of all the paid apps, so you can use those for 14 days. I know it says 13. I've had this up an extra day, and you'll be able to use those as you need them for those extra days. just to try them out and see what you want to buy. If you want to buy a complete package, again, you can definitely install this and get this to the point you want without any problems. So generally, your configuration will look like this when you install the default apps. As you can see, there's quite a few, and then you can make customizations on that. Some of the customizations that you want to do, I generally put for the admin, I always put the email in here so I can get alerts as I have problems. As the Untangle finds issues to alert me, I'll go ahead and add that. If I want to administrate this remotely, for example, what I'll do is go ahead and set up OpenVPN so I can connect this box from anywhere on the internet and get that. If I don't have the ability to use OpenVPN because I don't have a static IP, what I may do, and this is only if you have a very secure password, you really have to be, I'm actually going to expose my login interface to the internet. Again, only do this if you have absolutely a really good password. And I'll go ahead and say allow HTTPS to the WANs. Of course, this will give access to the login page for everyone on the internet. So the password is crucial on that. I can't emphasize that more. So some of the configurations I'll do. Some of the other things I'll do once I have my Untangle up and running is I'll take a look at my configuration and configure any interfaces that I haven't done yet. So here I have 4 interfaces. I've configured them in different ways. I'm going to go ahead and enable my wireless. I'm going to set that to bridge, and I'm going to bridge that to my external in this case, and then set those up as I need. So this one is disabled, so I'll go ahead and enable this one also. I'm going to bridge that to my external and have different ways of configuring that out. Oh, forgot to save that, so I need to save. So I'll go ahead and save that. Just takes a little bit of saving. Do we have any questions on the basic configuration?
There's tons of questions. Not sure about basic configuration. There was one configuration about VPN, if it works with Radius and other connectory options. If you want to just show that app maybe really quick and show the options.
Right. So what we'll do is go ahead and install that app. Let me just refresh that.
People are commenting on your passwords.
Sorry. I didn't realize that was there. That was from a test of some other configuration. Somehow I lost connection to that box. All right, so anyways, so for if you're looking to do more of a corporate environment, so what we'll do is go to directory connector. And then if we want to do radius, we'll just set up our radius connector, put the name, the authentication ports, and then your particular password for getting into the radius. This will enable a couple things. You can in turn, let's not say that, but you can in turn and set up not OpenVPN, but Let's go back here. What we're looking for is this. So then you can set up your L2TP connections with radius authentication instead of using local things. That works out a lot better for corporate environments. That way you can just use your whatever radius passwords you have for other things. It also becomes their L2TP VPN logins. So
Hey, John, someone's asking if there's what is the difference between the graphic and the non-graphic way of installing?
it's just, it doesn't have a nice background on it. It's a text-based, and that's really the only difference. One is it uses a nice background, there's colors. If you use a regular install, it's just plain text. And it just has to do whether if X windows can open out to your monitor. There's variations on that too, because you can actually do a serial install, and in those cases you only want to choose serial console port. Then you only want to do a text-based install, obviously, if you're on a serial console. Some of the other things that you can look at, let's take a look. Adding interfaces and so forth, that's actually a good one. So if we look over here, we can set up our port forwards, any port forwards that we have. We can make rules so they're limited by IP addresses, things like that. We're also, if we have a host name, we can add that in there to a particular host name. We can add our dynamic DNS services. These are all things that we're going to do. Again, wireless configuration, you want to set up your SDN, you want to set your passwords for it, and if you want to set a specific channel for that login. Also, if it's going to be addressed or bridged, so forth. Again, once you make those changes, that not only do you have to save in that dialog, but you do have to save down here at the bottom for saving it for the networking. So this just saves it in a temporary file, and then this makes it permanent for your settings. So every time you boot up and make changes and so forth. Some of the other things you want to do, you might want to make if you're using DHCP, you might make some boxes static. That way you can know what their IPs are going to be. If you have other DNS servers, if you're like in a corporate environment, you may want to link to those so the machine will know how to get specific addresses and where to get those areas. A lot of things that I start looking at is like my reports, seeing which ones I'm most interested in those, and I might just add that to the dashboard. Like if you see a report that you want to see on a consistent basis, you can add it to the dashboard. And so when you go to the dashboard, you have all the type of reports that you're interested in all the time. And you can see what's going on. As you can see, I rarely have people connected to my wireless. Most of the people are wired. I can kind of keep track of how heavy use my wireless. Maybe I have to add more wireless access points. I can see who's using most of the data. I can see what kind of sessions they go to. And you notice they're blank as I scroll down because they only fill in as they're visible. So as you can see, they'll fill in. I can see what kind of data is. Obviously, you can see the webinar message. This is actually my home box, and you can see the data that's going on that. Some of the other, some of the other areas, remote administration, went through that. Best is to use either OpenVPN or LTP to connect to your box. If you do have to use direct access, just be careful on the passwords. Debugging, of course, you may run into problems with your particular configuration, and you're like, why can a machine not get on the network, so forth. Look at the session viewer here. This will tell you everything that's going on as far as all the data. Let me just scoot that over so it's a little easier to see. All the data that you can use, and you can see the boxes. I generally do a sort by their IP address. So I'll say group by this field. So this will split up the machines by their IP address, and then I'll take a look why this particular machine is not on the network and why it's not connecting properly. I can also see what hosts are connected to my machine and see any kind of, if there's some machine missing, I can start figuring out why it's not on there. I can also see which interface it's on. Maybe I have it connected to the wrong interface. I also, on the sessions view, if I have multiple policies, I can see what policy they're actually going through. In this case, they're all going through the default rack, which is kind of a typical home use. You don't have a lot of racks. Any other questions on this?
Okay. Let's see. Can the Untangle static DNS entries be queried by other LAN hosts?
No. So if you're running DHCP on the Untangle is the one that has control over the DHCP. So you can have items, boxes or devices on your network that you've entered a static IP manually on that box. But if you want the DHCP server to actually always give that same IP address, you need to just click add, and then it will move it over to this side. And then whenever this MAC address comes on the network and asks for IP, it will always give it this specific IP address.
Let's see. I have a server running Untangle, have my own wireless access points. I set up a separate interface for the AP bridge to my LAN. Any security recommendations for hardening security for the Wi-Fi connections?
One of the things that you can do, and depending on how you're using that AP, is you can go ahead and set up a separate policy manager. So maybe you want to set them up on a separate rack. So what I would do is probably set it up, like a guest rack and so forth, like this mobile device. And then what you can do is set up a rule based on the interface. For example, on this one, I can just have, I'll say, anyone that's going through my wireless interface will go through this mobile device network thing. So this way, I'm separating my wireless out from the rest of the network. Now, of course, that's a lot different. So if you have a corporate environment, obviously you're going to have quite a few laptops, and those laptops do have to be on the corporate network. So sometimes you have different networks, AP networks for that, and you can base the policies based on what interface they're coming in on.
Okay, someone is mentioning that you are using IP addresses for port forwarding configuration. Can you use DNS names instead, or link IP addresses to a friendly name or something?
Right, that's not possible because port forwarding is done on layer 3, and layer 3 only knows about the IP addresses. You can't do IP address because a name has to be looked up on DNS, and at the point the connection is made, a decision has to be made. You can't wait until you do a DNS lookup on a name on that. So yeah, if you're looking to, like, let's say you have a web server behind Untangle and you have multiple websites on that web server, you have to use the Apache configuration to direct to different web services based on name as opposed to IP address.
Okay. Is there a way to revoke a DHCP lease if I want to assign the IP to a new host?
So you can, but there's some caveats on there. So first of all, DHCPs are done on request. So if a machine requests a new IP, the DHCP server can give it a new IP. But for example, let's say I've decided that I want to use this IP address for another machine, and I'll go ahead and delete this and maybe put another machine on that IP address. Not until this particular machine wants to give up that IP address will it get a new IP. Typical things is on Windows, you can do a release, IP config release on the commands, or you can reboot the machine. But you can't, from the server, make a machine change its IP while it's running.
Let's see. Sorry, tons of questions coming in. Can the report template be, can you add a logo to the report template?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
It says, can the report template be edited to have the client's logo?
There's actually no logo on the reports themselves. You can change this logo at the top, which also changes the block page. Let me just go to that real quick. So there's something called the branding manager right here. So in this, you can change the logo. As you can see, my logo is a little different. You can change the company name and any kind of URL on it, the names and so forth. You can make those changes on there. And that will change any kind of Untangle logo that's on the product to your own and your own name. So there'll be very little Untangle on the product itself. So it's a way, if you're a MSP or you're a network consultant, you can kind of brand the Untangle firewall with your particular branding. So it gives you a better presence in your client's network.
Okay. Can you show the devices tab and show how you can edit that? Someone's wanting to know why IP addresses aren't shown, and I know we can edit those.
So devices, and the reasons the IP is not shown, this is every device this particular Untangle has ever seen. So they're not necessarily on the network at any one time. Therefore, there's no IP address. So this is the place where you can assign usernames to it, things like that. What I usually do is I look at my host table here, and then I'll just copy the MAC address that I have over here, and then I'll go to the device table, and then I'll just find that particular address. So right here. So then I can give it a name and type, and then save that configuration. And that's the difference between hosts. Hosts are hosts that you've seen that have had a session go through Untangle within 24 hours. So it's a pretty active host. Devices are every single device it's ever seen. Every MAC address it's ever seen on its network is listed. And this goes both ways. Like if there's an incoming box, it will see the last stop of the MAC address that it had. So it works in both ways. And of course, we have our users column, which is pretty much every box that you've labeled, or if you use Captive Portal where they sign in for it, or if they VPN in through either OpenVPN or LTTP, that will show the username associated with that account also.
Do we support multi-tenancy or a solution for MSPs to handle multiple customers?
Yes, that's Command Center. So so if we go over here, my account, so we can log into our Command Center. So I'll go ahead and log in. See what's happening here. All right. Probably too many things on my network at this point. So in this case, I can log into my account and see all the boxes that are running on there. So I have all these boxes, and I can manage all these. I can go to, shows you how many appliances I have online, if I have any offline. I can also go directly to those appliances and manage them remotely. So I can just click on one and see what's going on with that particular box. I can access it directly by just clicking the remote access and accessing it that way. So there's multiple ways I can do that to get around to manage multiple boxes like that. It's quite a useful tool that we've added just this year. And we're expanding all the way. You'll be able to do aggregated reports. You can select multiple boxes and upgrade them all at once. You can just click upgrade and it will upgrade them all. Multiple ways to do that. It's a quite useful tool. We have a webinar on that if you want to look into that. I think we're kind of running out of time now. So so again, definitely go over Session Viewer and Event Report. That will give you the best debugging if you're having problems with your network. One thing too, go on the forums. We're super active on the forums. It's one of the few companies that you'll see developers actually answering questions for people on the network.
All right, thanks, John. I know there's a ton of questions that we didn't answer. We're trying to get to them, but you know, this webinar is not going to last forever. So if we didn't get to your question, please email us, support@untangle.com. They are very quick at responding. Or as John mentioned, you can post on our forums. It's a community. You know, we have a bunch of developers on there, our own employees that go on there and answer questions. So I know this is a very technical and you know, specific webinar. A lot of people were asking about applications. We have a whole bunch of webinars on all of our applications, paid and free. Check out our YouTube channel where John goes into each of those applications, how to configure, and the different network setups that you can do. If you go to the next slide, John. So if this is completely confusing to you, we do offer professional services. If you don't even know where to start or just need help making sure making sure you have the configuration set up correctly or need help installing anything. Our team is very good at that. So give us a call or email us. Let's see. Questions, we went through those. A lot of very specific questions, as I mentioned, please email us. We'll be happy to help. If you have any questions about sales or pricing, our pricing is all on our website. And if you want to talk to a salesperson, they'd be happy to talk and make sure you get the right solution for you. I do want to mention some promotions that we have going on right now for those of you still on. If you actually have a older Untangle solution or a competitor's product, you can trade in or trade up those for some great pricing. Give us a call today to find out what works for you. And I know a lot of our customers are home customers, which we love. And if for those of you that are home users and bring us to your work or clients, we do offer some incentive pricing for that as well. So give us a call and see what you can get. I think that's it. Again, thank you so much for attending, everyone, and hopefully that helped kind of clarify some questions you guys had. If you want a specific demo, we do have some network engineers that would be happy to give you a demonstration of the product. You can email us at sales@untangle.com to get that set up. Our next webinar, we have a community webinar on version 13.2, which was released yesterday on the 30th of January. So you can register for that to find out about all the new features that were just released. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks, John.